Matt, I don't know if you've noticed, there is a big building out on the edge of town at Bagby and Highway 6. I know you're pretty busy and you may have noticed that. There's a lot of lights on it at night too. It's very pretty. Huge building. Are you
Right.
aware of anything going on out there?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Todd, we are. It's interesting. Just a couple nights ago, my wife wanted to make sure that I had a chance to see that building. She said, "Have you seen that building at night?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I've seen that building at night."
Yeah,
She said, "Well, I think you could probably see it from outer space." We were just joking around about it, but
yeah,
no, that's a Amazon robotic fulfillment center that's coming to town. Just an incredibly important win for our community and for the greater Waco area. North of 2 million square feet, going to be over 1,000 jobs, and obviously, an extremely well-known company in brand. So it's a big victory for us in our community.
yeah. I didn't realize until I heard Chris speak at the meeting the other day. I picked up on the 700,000 square feet. And I thought, well, that's a nice size. I know they build bigger, but that's the footprint. And being 3 stories tall, I mean, it's 2 million feet of space.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
It's vertical, so that's the footprint, and you have the main floor, and then there are 3 stories above that. And again, the emphasis on robotics. Chris Collins and I were talking about. And Chris leads our economic development efforts. We're just talking about the top 2 floors on that building and how they don't have to be very high. I think Chris said they're going to be around 8 feet tall because that's where the robots will be existing and will be active in the
yeah.
movement of materials of goods. So it is really a state of the art, very, very cool project.
And I know there's been some articles on this already, but what amount of jobs, what type of jobs are we looking at there for that size of facility?
Right, right. Well, it's 1,000 jobs.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we started
Excellent.
off with Matt, and he's done pretty well so far. For Matt, he knows what the big building is out on the highway. I didn't know if he knew that or not, and I held up a cue card, and he got that part right. But we just kind of started off, and he was telling us about that facility, of course, that's getting so much of attention. Um, and I got to the point I just was asking him as far as the jobs going in the facility, number of jobs, price range, or wage rate, those type of things. I know there's been some publicity on that, but I thought I'd get that in there too.
Yeah. 1,000 jobs over 2 years. About 90% of those are going to be fulfillment center workers, with about 10% in management and supervisory roles. Base entry wage is $15 an hour for those fulfillment positions. And, one of the great things about what they do is they start providing benefits to their employees on day one. So there's not a waiting period there.
Yeah, Matt and I were talking earlier before we actually were recording. Uh, Amazon brings a lot of attention, but the underlying process of what there's been so much. I attended the board meeting today. So many announcements coming. The Amazon gets attention, but the underlying things that are bringing them here is really what's causing it. What brings, just for those that aren't as familiar with this, what brings people here? Well, what are they looking for, Chris? Companies of that size and smaller. I mean, the smaller ones get less attention, but they sure add up.
Yeah. Probably the number one driver is the location. Access to a customer base would be the next piece. Being able to access those folks in the larger metros, but being able to be halfway between Dallas and Austin, and being 100 miles between both of them
Yeah.
is easy access at a lower cost of operations. From a business perspective, having a strong talent pipeline is another major reason that people are choosing us. And, that's a great quality of life. I mean, companies want to locate where their people are going to be happy. And this is a community that people can be successful in, both in their personal and professional worlds.
Yeah, I heard someone that was involved with the Tesla location of their plant in Austin talked about what percentage of their employees for this manufacturing plant they're planning on pulling out of Hutto and Pflugerville and the surrounding areas, not just in Austin or Travis County proper. That in these type of areas, people will drive for those jobs. And so that workforce is a big part of it. I know.
Yeah, we tend to draw from about a 45-mile radius.
Yeah.
For ours, or a 45-minute drive time. For some people outside of Texas, it's hard for them, or even in the major metro areas, it's hard for them to think about that 45 minutes and 45 miles can be about the same thing in our community, right?
And rail systems is another one, not as big in numbers, but sure, those are the type of ones that really add up too. You'll speak a little bit about that announcement.
Yeah. Advanced Rail Systems, great company, currently located in Falls County, but have a facility under construction right now, right outside of Riesel, moving and relocating their corporate and international headquarters to McLennan County. And this is a group that's doing business all over the world, designing the switching systems for rail companies, both domestically and internationally. Great engineering and assembly positions, really strong wages associated with that. I think their average wage is close to $70,000 a year. So a good team. They're going to continue to grow, bring in 20 jobs with them for this facility, with expanding up to 69 jobs over the next few years. A lot of growth potential for them on the horizon.
And I know since we first lined up this discussion, there's been more announcements. And can you kind of put that in context for us, Matt? You mentioned in today's meeting, in context of where we are now as opposed to where we've been in the past. There's so many announcements, but you made some comment, I forgot what it was, about the context of how that lines up with what's going on in past years, so people can
Right,
see.
and Chris spoke to that as well. We measure our economic activity and we look at what we call a pipeline, Todd.
Yeah.
And our pipeline is those businesses, those companies that we're working with that are giving consideration to this marketplace. And in the framework of that pipeline, we look at them in the context of those that are very likely to land here, those that are strongly considering our marketplace, and then others that we're hopeful, but we're still working with them in terms of identifying site location or incentives, or what may make them ultimately make the decision to come into the market. In days gone by, we've always had a strong pipeline, but I think it's really fair to say that our pipeline right now is really kind of breathtaking, frankly.
Yeah.
Chris can talk about numbers, but we have a sizable number of companies that we are deeply into the relationship with right now, that we are having discussions related to incentives, and we're close we have some additional announcements that are coming, and we're very, very close to some others. And so, between now and the end of the year, it looks favorable. We may have yet another announcement, Chris, between now and the end of the year. We're hopeful. But as we discussed today, Todd, our first quarter of next year is really shaping up nicely for a series of announcements as well. So, we look at the level of activity, we look at the pipeline of companies that we're working with. Beyond all of that, Chris can talk more about this, but we're also today, we also have been talking about the number of projects that we have been successful with this year and the magnitude of those projects in the context of our historical level of performance as an economic development organization. And I'll let Chris talk about that a little bit because it's very impressive.
Yeah, we've had a great year when it comes to new jobs announced, capital investment, new construction, and absorbed real estate for the market. So to set the table, normally we have it's a really strong year for us if we are announcing 500 new jobs for the market, $100 million worth of capital investment, and 500,000 square feet of absorbed or new space for the community. And this year we will with the announcements that we still have pending that are coming before the end of the year, we'll exceed 1,500 new jobs announced. We'll exceed $400 million in new capital investment, and will exceed 2.4 million we'll exceed 3 million square feet in real estate. And the majority of that, 2.7 million square feet of that, is new construction for the market that's either under construction right now, especially with Amazon, but several other announcements that we've made this year that will begin construction in 2021. So it's a lot of activity that's happening in the market.
It's hard to kind of digest those numbers. They're so big,
Yeah.
compared to many years ago. Matt, one thing I wanted to get in that I know we've talked a little bit in the past. When we look at these things in infrastructure, we tend to think of geography and those things we've talked about and the things you can touch. The role the chamber plays in this, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. I wanted to get that in there. It's in our upbringing in business. We were always taught that the chamber is just part of that infrastructure. It's utilities, it's the labor force, it's the roads, it's the railways. It's part of that infrastructure. It doesn't just happen in a vacuum. You've got campaign going on, resource campaign, and how can just speak a little bit to that broad role that the chamber does in facilitating this type of activity, and briefly how that ties into how why that campaign is so important and what people can do to help other than write a check and be a member and all, but just tie that together because that's something that gets lost. I think people just think it happens, and there's so much that goes into that.
Yeah, right. No, I appreciate that, Todd. Economic development doesn't just happen it's not by happenstance, right? If you look at what's happening in our region, if you look at what's happening in Greater Waco, that is being driven by way of an economic development strategic plan, and it's being driven by way of an economic development collaborative. So the Chamber is the lead organization in terms of economic development, but we work very closely with strategic partners to make these things happen, to make great things happen in the Greater Waco marketplace. We work closely with the city. We work closely with the county. We work closely with the Waco McLennan County Economic Development Corporation and the Waco Industrial Foundation, which is the real estate development component of economic development here. So all of those entities are extremely important. For us to be able to be successful as the lead economic development organization, it always comes down to resources. We have to be adequately resourced to be able to go out into the Texas marketplace, the national marketplace, and yes, globally, be able to compete with many, many other economic development organizations that are out there telling their story as well and chasing, a very finite number of opportunities that exist on an annualized basis. So the world of economic development is not for the faint of heart. It is extremely competitive. And for our region, for our community, our partnership, to be successful, we have to be adequately capitalized. So this organization goes out once every 5 years and pivots to the private sector and asks the private sector to help fund our economic development strategic plan, which is a 5-year economic development strategic plan. That's an important part of how we capitalize or pay for our work. Each year also, the Chamber undertakes a total resource campaign. And that's an important way in which we help to capitalize our economic development work. And then our membership, companies, Todd, like yours and others that come up alongside us, not just in, being Build Greater Waco or economic development investors and not just investing in the total resource campaign, but also being members and saying, we support the work that you're doing. We want to make sure you're adequately resourced to be able to go out and be effective. So it's always about resources, and we've been really fortunate in this community, but I will say that there's always room for more. And we want to bring as many businesses into the tent to help fund or help capitalize our work as we possibly can, because that means more dollars, but it also means more voices and more really smart people sitting around the table. And from that comes a tremendous synergy that leads to a lot of creative ideation, a lot of innovation that comes out of this marketplace. And very frankly, I think the world's starting to realize that we've got it going on here, that we are very pro-business and business friendly, that we do have a very strong collaborative focusing on making them successful. And our physical location is just over the top. It's outstanding in terms of where one can place a company. So but it's all about team, and it's all about resources, and we'd like to have more at the table with us.
I saw Elon Musk announced that he's moving to Texas. Is he coming to Waco? Is that something you can't talk about, Chris? I'm looking real close to see. Maybe not Waco, but close.
He has a lot of different assets and businesses in the state of Texas.
Sure does.
So I think it provides him an opportunity to be in a variety of places in a very short period of time.
Well, I appreciate you all taking the time to do this. You were rock stars. Y'all are so busy. There's so much going on. I know it. Y'all who have a lot of Zoom meetings. There was a board meeting today. I have to apologize. My wife made me apologize because the other night when I was lining this up, I emailed you late night and she said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, just," and she said, they don't need to be hearing emails from you anyway. So I was, I don't expect you to return my emails late at night or whatever. I was just when I was thinking about it, well, whatever. But y'all are really busy, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I hope people will see this and be warm and receptive. Many times they don't realize a lot of those calls were coming for those resource campaigns. It's a big volunteer network. Most of those people are not chamber employees. It's a huge volunteer network. So when they're trying to set up those warm calls and meetings and things, especially in this environment, people need to be open to it because it's all helping each other,
Yeah, I appreciate that, Todd. We have about 130 or 140 volunteers who do that for us each year, and they're incredible volunteers.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for the time in doing this, and we'll spread this around and get some word out. And I know you'll have other things coming on in the next quarter.
We appreciate it, Todd.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.